Hi, today we're going to make this bowl shape and export it as an FBX file. Let's get started. So start by making sure that this drop-down menu says polygons. If it doesn't, click on the arrow and drag down and select polygons. Then go to Create, Polygon Primitives, Sphere. Click and drag near the center of the grid to create a sphere. Hit the 5 key to get into shaded mode, and you'll be able to see the faces on your sphere better. Let's click and drag on Translate X, Y, and Z to select those fields and hit 0. Or you can click in each field individually and hit 0. And this will center our sphere at the very center, at the origin, at the very center of our grid. Let's also go into Polysphere right here. Click on that to open this little menu. And we're going to change the subdivision axis to 12 so that the sphere is 12 faces around. And then let's change the subdivision height to 8 so that it is 8 faces high. And this will make selection of our faces a little bit easier. Now let's hold down the Alt button and drag around with the left mouse button to view our sphere, to change the view of our sphere, and move it so that the grid kind of cuts the sphere in half. So that's how we are viewing the grid right now. Now right click, with the sphere still selected, right click and go into face mode. This allows us to select the individual faces of the sphere. Click and drag so that the selection box selects all the faces on the top half of the sphere. Any face that the selection box touches will be selected. Now we've selected the top half of the sphere. Hit the Alt button and drag with the left mouse button to change our view, and make sure that you've only selected the faces at the top of the sphere. Hit delete. I'm going to zoom in on my bowl by holding on the Alt key and clicking and dragging on the right mouse button. Now we have just the bottom half of the sphere. Now we're still in face mode. We want to get back into object mode. So right click and drag to object mode. We want to give the sphere a little bit of thickness. Click on your sphere and we're going to go Edit Mesh, Extrude. So click on the blue arrow and drag out so that your bowl is getting a little bit thicker. I'm satisfied with that, so I'm going to click outside the sphere, and now we're done extruding. So make sure your sphere is selected. Hit W to get into move mode. If for some reason that doesn't work, click outside the sphere to unselect the sphere, click the sphere to select again, and then hitting W should work. Drag the sphere up so that it looks like the bottom of the sphere is sitting on the grid. Hit the Alt button and drag with the left mouse button to see that the bottom of the sphere is sitting on the grid. Move it up a bit, and there, I feel like it's sitting on the grid more. I'm hitting Alt and dragging with the left mouse button again to move my view. And now I want to go to Modify, Freeze Transforms. And when I do that, this will go back to 0, 0, 0. And that tells Maya that this is the new default position of my sphere. And that way, when I export the sphere somewhere, it won't have these transforms added to it. It can do funny things in another engine when you have transforms that are on your sphere. So now my sphere knows it's supposed to be exactly here in Maya when I export it. So let's export our sphere, our half sphere. Go to File, Export All. Make sure the path is where you want to save your file. Change it if you need to. Come up with a name for your file. I'm just going to call it new half sphere. And then, this is the really important part, make sure it's exporting as an FBX file. So you're going to drag down and make sure that FBX export is selected. And now hit Export All. Finally, let's make our bowl a little bit flatter and give it a nice green color. First, I'm going to hit Alt and drag with the right mouse button to zoom in, and then Alt middle mouse button to pan, and Alt left mouse button to change my view a bit if I want to look at the sphere in different ways. And let's flatten it. So select it and hit R to get into scale mode, and just grab the this top manipulator and see how the bowl is getting flat. Hit Alt and left mouse button to see a better view of how the bowl is getting flat if I drag, or it could be really long if I drag the other way, but we want to make it flatter. So let's drag in quite a bit and say I'm happy with this. Let's hit W to move it back down so that it looks like it's sitting on the grid again. I'm going to hit Alt and drag with the left mouse button to look at my bowl. Now let's color it a nice green color. So let's go to Windows, Rendering Editors, and Hypershade. We're going to create a new material, create Materials, Lambert, and double click on the Lambert. It'll bring up the attribute editor, and here I'm going to move it out of the way so we can still see the bowl. It'll bring up the attribute editor. You want to click on the color swatch of our new Lambert shader, and then I choose green, and I can mess around in here and drag it a little bit so it's a little more of a blue-green. Say I'm happy with that. Then I can just apply it. So I want to select my bowl again, and then right-click on the material and go Assign Material to Selection. And there, now my bowl is a nice green color. I'm going to close that window. Let's freeze our transforms before we export. Let's close the attribute editor by clicking on this little X here, and we'll get our channel box. And in the channel box, you can see that Translate has some information on it because we moved our bowl after we scaled it, and then the Y scale has information on it because we made our bowl shallow. So let's go to Modify, Freeze Transformations, and now the translate values are all back to 0, rotate we never changed and they're at 0, and scale information is all at 1 again. Now let's export our bowl to an FBX file. Go to File, Export All. Let's call it New HalfSphere 2. And just make sure file of type is, again, FBX. If it's not, click and drag down to FBX Export and hit Export All. Now we've exported our bowl.